With it being the international break and me being away from my usual setup, I'm also dealing with a sore throat today. I want to talk about things a bit differently today. Instead of looking at the current game, I want to talk about things from a bit more of a historical perspective. I want to talk a little bit about my all-time Premier League 11. A few years ago, I sat down and made my all-time best Premier League 11. This is a mix of overall quality of players along with their longevity. So for the longevity part, for example, Luis Suarez, who might have had one of the best seasons in the Premier League ever, would not be included due to not playing the league for a very long time. But with out of the way, the team was Peter Schmeichel in goal, John Terry and Rio Ferdinand at center back, Gary Neville on the right, Ashley Cole on the left, a center midfield partnership of Paul Scholes and Steve Gerrard, Ronaldo on one wing, Ryan Giggs on the other, Thierry Henry and Alan Shearer up top. Now, I made this list a while ago. I'm not sure if I'd agree with everything I said then today. For example, up top, Wayne Rooney and Alan Shearer, that's a very interesting conversation to have. Then in the midfield, that's a never-ending debate. And the formation choice of a 4-4-2 instead of a 4-3-3, that could be changed. But overall, I feel pretty happy about that 11. That's not terrible for the time. But things have changed since then. Kevin De Bruyne has broken into my all-time Premier League 11. With how good he's been for Man City for so long, how amazing his passing has been, how many assist titles he's won, how many Premier League titles he's won, he easily cracks this all-time 11. And in addition, I'd include Mo Salah, probably over Ryan Giggs as the new left-footed winger. His goal scoring for Liverpool has been so prolific, and he's been their best player of their resurgence under Klopp. I think those two easily crack the Premier League 11 now. And I should repeat, everybody even being considered for this lineup is an all-time great player, and this is a truly hard lineup to break into. But when you look at this team, there seems to be one pretty clear weak link in the squad. Gary Neville. No disrespect to him as a player, I just said he's an all-time great, consistent player for Manchester United for over a decade, dependable defender, solid going forward, and just a really consistent player. But when compared to the rest of the squad, he's just a level below, and he seems like the player in the team who's most easily replaceable right now. And there's been one candidate to do that who's been popping up lately. Kyle Walker. Walker has been one of the top right backs in the Premier League for well over a decade now, and he does not look like he's slowing down. After a really good spell at Spurs, he joined Man City and has been a part of their dominance of the Premier League. In addition, he's been a starter for England at every major tournament since Euro 2016, and probably would have been a starter earlier if he wasn't unlucky with injuries. He has amazing pace, which allows him to defend some of the top players in the world, some players that other fullbacks couldn't dream of keeping up with, and this really shined last season in the treble-winning campaign for Man City. He was named to the Champions League squad of the season, and in addition, he really shined when defending Vinicius of Real Madrid as Man City defeated them. In addition, he's so solid defensively that he's often been used as a center back in a back three, both with England, just like Gary Neville has been, and with Man City as well. And he's not bad going forward either. His speed allows him to be really good going up and down the wing, and he has a good cross on him. With all the tools he has, it's easy to see why he'd be compared with Gary Neville. But there's a reason why Walker isn't considered the best, at least not yet. And that's because he always seems to have a mistake in him. And listen, when you're talking about defenders, everybody makes mistakes. And especially when somebody's been playing as long as Kyle Walker, you can always put together a compilation of their biggest errors. A lot of the times that's just a testament to their longevity. But it's a bit different with Walker. He's somebody who never really trust at the back. You never truly feel comfortable with having in the team because you just know that error could come. And going forward, sure, he's good, but I think when you compare him and Gary Neville, you'd be splitting hairs to call one better than the other. And that's without considering that Neville played in a much more defensive era for fullbacks. Last season was the biggest example of Walker's inconsistency. He began the season as a starter, but then Man City changed to a 3-2-4-1. It still does not feel natural to say that formation, and Walker was benched. And Guardiola even said that Walker just wasn't good enough to play in that new formation. But then Guardiola did play Walker in that new formation against Arsenal in a game with title implications, and Walker played great. And then he had an amazing game against Real Madrid and Vinicius Jr., defending him as well as anybody has ever. And then the Champions League final came around, and he was benched. Sure, he wasn't 100%, but neither was Nathan Ake or Kevin De Bruyne, and Guardiola is known for playing players who aren't at 100% during Champions League finals. It seems like when push comes to shove, he just isn't trusted. He can do a great job locking down a specific star, being a good role player, but in a normal environment, you'd probably want somebody else. He could be a top player on his day, but is a bit too inconsistent. How much of a problem is that, though, especially at fullback? I mean, Marcelo is somebody I consider the top left back of his generation, but he was never a reliable defender. Well, Walker just doesn't have a great offensive skill. I mean, he's good, but he's gone entire seasons without goal contributions. And there's a reason why Pep dropped him last season. He's just not as strong technically as the rest of that Man City team and can be a little bit weaker on the ball. And I don't think he's ever been seen as a truly elite player. In the 2010s, there wasn't that much of a difference between him and Ivanovic, between him and Zabaleta. And today, I think when Reece James is healthy, he's better than Kyle Walker. And despite Trent Alexander-Arnold's defensive deficiencies, when he's on, he's one of the best players in the world, a truly elite level player. And if Trent stays at right back and Reece James stays healthy, they'll probably go down as better players than Walker. But that goes away from the original question. Would I take Kyle Walker over Gary Neville? Neville was a superb player tactically. He had amazing consistency. Despite not being the best athlete, he was always in the right spot defensively and would always make the right play. He was also good going forward, but I think nothing special, even for the time. I think that Lee Dixon was a player just as comparable to him offensively. Then you have Kyle Walker, elite pace, an amazing 1v1 defender, great defensively as well, being played at center back at times, good going forward, not great just like Neville, and he does have a bit more inconsistencies to him. The comparison can be tough because when you have two top players at the same position, you like to compare them peak for peak. What I mean by that is that both of the players at their best compare with each other. And if you look at them when they're both at their best, Kyle Walker's the better player. I don't see any world where Gary Neville's able to slow down Vinicius in the way that Kyle Walker did. But the thing about peak for peak is that isn't just one game. You have to look over the course of an entire season. And over the course of last season, Walker was very inconsistent. There were times where he just wasn't good enough to keep up with the rest of that Man City team. But when he's at his best, he's over Gary Neville. It's a tough comparison to make. As of right now, I think I'd keep Gary Neville in my all-time Premier League 11. It's close, and when it's this close, I feel like it's on the challenger to really assert themselves and take that spot in the 11, like a Kevin De Bruyne has, like a Mo Salah has. And I think Walker could easily do that, especially given that he hasn't been slowing down at all. I think his longevity will take him over Gary Neville if he keeps it up for another 2 or 3 years. But right now I feel comfortable keeping Gary Neville in the team. So that's my thoughts on Kyle Walker and his place historically. And I think this was pretty fun. It'd be fun to do this again, maybe next international break. Dive into my all-time Premier League 11, because it certainly has changed from the one that I gave at the beginning. I think it'd be something fun to do. If you're interested in that, let me know. If you liked it, like, subscribe. With that, see you.